At midnight, I messaged my brother, "Bro, I don't want to live anymore." He quickly replied, "Then hurry up and die." And then I really died. At my funeral, he cried until he fainted. Brother, taking sleeping pills to die is so painful. The next time I thought about death was on my birthday. The whole family was celebrating Jessica's birthday at a hot spring hotel. While I was in the park on a lounge chair, thinking about how to die, I searched for sleeping pills on a food delivery app. Instead, a free psychological support hotline popped up. Even the smart voice assistant chimed in, "Don't think about these things. There are still many people who love you in this world, including me." I buried my head in my arms, tears streaming down. But, in this world, there's no one left who loves me. An hour ago, the phone rang, and I didn't pick it up. Messages flooded in. "Today is Jessica's birthday, where are you? Are you deliberately making us feel bad? Jessica feels embarrassed to cut the cake without you. Cindy, answer the phone." It was my mom sending the messages. Jessica is their adopted daughter, and it's her birthday today. Everyone in the family blamed me for being stubborn and not attending Jessica's birthday. But everyone forgot, today is also my birthday. My family used to love me. Before I was abducted, I was the happiest kid in the world. At the age of 7, I was kidnapped. I heard my mom cried for me with tears. But why doesn't she love me now? During those 8 years of being abducted, no matter how inhumanely I was treated, I endured it all without ever thinking of death. But when I finally returned home, and saw a pampered adopted sister added to the family, I felt empty inside. Just a month after I returned home, Jessica was found in the bathroom with slashed wrists. After being taken to the hospital, she cried to my mom and dad, saying she couldn't stand me. That was when Dad slapped me for the first time. That's when I first thought of death. I heard from my brother that my parents adopted Jessica because they felt a connection because she was so similar to the old me. Sweet, shy, with a dimple when she smiles. Even their birthdays fall on the same day. Jessica was like the younger version of me before I turned 8. But what about me? After wandering outside for 8 years, I had changed. I often wondered if Mom and Dad preferred Jessica because she resembled the Cindy they once loved so dearly. Riding my bike back home, passing through a downhill slope in the outskirts, I suddenly thought, what if I opened my arms and became a free bird? So I did it. The bike went out of control. I fell down, lying on the roadside. It was painful, exhausting. I didn't want to get up, just lying there. Until it grew dark, until it started drizzling. I had to get up and go back home. "Cindy, what happened to you?" A warm hand landed on my forehead. I looked up in surprise at Simon. "How come you're home?" Simon didn't speak but silently guided me to sit down. He opened the first aid kit, applying iodine on my forehead. That's when I realized I was injured. Simon's method of bandaging was so gentle, almost brought tears to my eyes. In the end, he led me to the dining room. "Cindy, happy birthday." He took out a small cake from the fridge. Tears finally streamed down my face. Simon is my brother. Not just mine, but Jessica's brother too. When he reached out his hand to me, I still grabbed it desperately. Because I needed it so much. To Jessica, brother's love was just one of the many loves. But I was standing at the edge of a cliff, on the brink. Without Simon's hand to reach out, I would die. "Hold on, why didn't you go to Jessica's birthday?" I couldn't help but pick at my nails. "I can chop wood and cook." Her eyes lit up. "Wow, that's impressive." "I can't cook at all." "Can you show off for me?" Finally, I mustered some confidence and nodded. She immediately grabbed my hand. "Dad. Mom. Cindy is going to cook for us." But when I got to the kitchen, I was dumbfounded. In the mountains, we cooked with firewood. I had never used these new things before. Naturally, I messed up that meal. Dad turned around and went back to his room, leaving me with a final word. "Do we lack a cook at home? If you can't do it, don't pretend, making the whole family wait for you." I realized that I always seemed to do things that upset everyone. I'd been trying to persevere, but tonight I suddenly wanted to be willful. Jessica cut her wrist and received the whole family's concern. Now, I'm doing the same. Will they shed a tear for me? As consciousness faded, I felt someone anxiously holding me. The scent of sandalwood filled my nose. I knew. It was my brother's cologne. As consciousness slipped into darkness, I only had one thought in my mind, my brother's embrace, so warm. I had a dream. In the dream, I went back to being 7 years old. The amusement park was colorful. There were no traffickers in the dream. My parents held my hand tightly, never letting me get lost. Even the air tasted like cotton candy. I woke up with a smile. But all I saw was an empty hospital room. Only my brother sat by the bed. He explained to me, Jessica got injured. I foolishly ran off to find them. At the door of the medical room, I saw Jessica, unscathed, lifting her bruised knee, coquettishly talking to our parents. It turns out I was being delusional again. Like being doused with a bucket of cold water in winter. I stood at the door of the medical room for a long time, and finally made a decision. I was going to move out of this home. I came here alone, and now, I'm leaving with just a potted plant. When I arrived, this plant was nearly dead from neglect. It grew lush because I watered it every day. It was the only thing in this home that belonged to me, so I took it with me. Perhaps because I left too quietly. It wasn't until Jessica showed up. I found out. No one looked for me because no one in the family noticed my absence. Ironically, the first person to notice I was gone was Jessica, who saw me as a thorn in her side. She wasn't about to let me go. Cindy, I'm here this time to ask you to call off the engagement with Mike. We truly love each other. Mike? My memory hasn't been great since I started taking medication. It took a long time before I finally remembered that person. Mike, my supposed fiancé, who was betrothed to me before I was born. He already took away my parents. How could I care about a fiancé I haven't seen in years? Seeing that I wasn't interested, Jessica's face gradually revealed a naked malice. Since you don't like this gift, how about this one? She dialed a number and put it on speaker. The familiar voice on the phone made me shiver. Amy, is that you? I finally found you. Amy, it's a name my demon gave me when he bought me. Hearing that name again, it felt like I was transported back several years. It felt like I had never escaped that mountain. I should have realized it. Buying abducted children would only get him 3 years at most. 3 years had passed, and he must have been released. I rushed forward and snatched the phone, screaming as I fell to the ground. After that day, I moved houses overnight. But I still lived in fear. Every day felt like walking on a knife's edge. I was so scared that I couldn't sleep at night. But no matter how scared I was, the nightmares eventually became a reality. I opened the door, and the demon who tormented me for 8 years was squatting at the door. I tried to close the door, but he squeezed his way in. I tried to call the police, but before I could get my phone, he kicked me to the ground. He straddled me, slapping me with every curse. Damn whore. I've raised you for so many years, you think you can just run away? Still want to run? Fine, run. Tears mixed with blood streamed down. I felt like I must look like a lunatic now. He spat in my face. I've raised you for so many years, let me enjoy myself a bit. No, no. But before I could shout, my clothes were torn apart, the world before my eyes shattered. I wished this was a dream. But I woke up from the cold floor. As I left the police station numbly, the wind on my face stung. I remembered the police's eyes filled with pity, gently asking. I knew they meant well, but describing these things felt like a bloody wound on my heart. I feared others knowing about my suffering and feared seeing pity in their eyes. I almost fled. But after running away, I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to return to that so-called home, nor did I want to go back to that rented house. Simon. Yes, I need to find Simon. Only he would show me some love. I stood in place, my hands shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. The screen lit up and darkened. The call wouldn't go through. Finally, a message popped up. It was from Jessica. We went out as a family, don't call, spoil sport. Tears fell on the screen, which I wiped away. Give the phone to Simon. Jessica's reply came quickly. Why are you calling Simon? Oh my God, you don't really think Simon likes his little sister, do you? Don't be so stupid, Cindy. Simon is nice to you because of me. I didn't believe her. Stubbornly, I messaged her, let Simon answer the phone. But I haven't finished writing yet and Simon's call appeared on my phone. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Cindy, don't be mad at Jessica on account of my kindness to you. He didn't mean to steal your fiancé, but Jessica and Mike grew up together. Jessica is not wrong, so I'll make it up to you, okay? Who cares about your compensation? I wanted to go crazy, to scream. But I opened my mouth for a long time and couldn't make any sound. Tears had dried up. My worthless heart shattered on the ground. Finally shattered. Simon, why do you have to treat me like this? In the next life, I don't want to be your sister. Cindy. Maybe I stayed silent for too long. Simon's voice gradually became anxious. If you don't love me, don't pretend. Like a puppy abandoned once. You picked her up, but then threw her away again. The puppy would die. Farewell, Simon. I said in my heart, then hung up. In the past, when I thought about death, I always had many concerns. The balcony plants hadn't been watered, the book bought last month hadn't been finished. The weather forecast said tomorrow would be sunny. Suddenly I wanted to soak up the sun. But now thinking about dying, I didn't think of anything. Thinking about the impending death, I actually felt relieved from the bottom of my heart. Finally, I was going to be free. Slowly, I walked to my rented house with enough sleeping pills in hand. I was afraid to go back there, but I didn't know where else I could find peace to leave. I would never go back to that house. But how could I go to a hotel? I was leaving anyway, I shouldn't cause trouble to others. Just quietly and peacefully die. Since I was already going to die, what was there to fear? I thought, but when I reached the entrance of the community, my whole body trembled. In the end, I squatted on the ground, burying my head in my sleeve helplessly. My emotions were like a broken remote control. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. I would burst into tears, letting my sleeve be wet with tears. Then I would feel like laughing hysterically. My emotions were on the verge of losing control. I felt my sleeve being tugged. Sister, why don't you eat candy? If you're not happy, you should eat candy. Don't you have any candy, sister? A candy was placed in my hand. The plastic wrapper showed 7 dazzling colors in the sunlight. I held onto the candy tightly. Until late at night, I still held the candy in my left hand. In my right hand was the bottle of sleeping pills. I wanted to try one last time. In the dark night, with only the light from my phone screen still on, I texted Simon, I don't want to live anymore. His response was cold, then go ahead and die. Ultimately, I started swallowing the sleeping pills one by one. I swallowed too many pills, and my throat hurt from the scratch. My consciousness quickly blurred. My heart was beating fast, my stomach burning. My body felt weak, as if falling asleep. But the dizziness, convulsions, and nausea on my body were painfully transmitted to my brain, as if I, a living dead person, was suffering. Was this the punishment for attempting suicide? Eating sleeping pills to die was so painful. Jessica, where's my phone? It was supposed to be a family outing, but Simon hadn't rested well in days. Closing his eyes brought up an inexplicable panic. Jessica handed him the phone, mine broke, so I used yours. Jessica was chirping like a bird in his ear. But for the first time, Simon wasn't paying attention. There were many business messages. But he bypassed those, and opened a clean chat box instead. There were no messages. The timestamp of the last message showed 1 week ago. Since that call days ago, he hadn't been able to contact Cindy. Is Cindy mad? He wondered. But it shouldn't be a big deal. She was always easy to soothe, just a little sugar, and she'd smile so happily. Everything would be fine this time too. The phone rang. It showed Cindy's name, but a stranger's voice answered, "Hey? Do you have a sister? The patient's phone only has your number saved. Please come to the hospital." The voice was noisy and painful. "Jessica, I need to go. I'm hurting all over." I struggled to open my eyes and saw many people in white coats walking around. It was a hospital. But didn't I leave already? Why was I back here again? Children's crying could be heard around me. My body was getting cold. Fragments of memories finally pieced together. 3 days ago that night, I didn't die. My mouth was too bitter. I feared the bitterness. I saw the candy that had rolled to the ground. I suddenly remembered. I hadn't had candy in a long time. The candy wrapped in cheap but colorful plastic. What did it taste like? I really wanted to try it. Having a taste of candy while being here on Earth, how could I forget the taste of candy before leaving? With my last bit of strength, I called the emergency number. Getting my stomach pumped was painful. But in the end, I walked out of the hospital doors. But why was I back here again? Closing my eyes, I remembered a speeding car rushing towards me. I remembered pushing a child away. Then there was a severe pain. I felt like I was being lifted up. The scenery around me was moving quickly. It felt like someone was holding my hand, urging me to hold on a little longer. But I couldn't hold on anymore. I felt my body losing warmth, getting colder bit by bit. The memories of the past 18 years flashed through my mind. In the last moment before death, I was still wondering, what did I do wrong? How did my life turn out like this? When Simon arrived at the hospital, he saw Cindy's lifeless body. How could this happen? Wasn't everything fine just a few days ago? "I'm sorry, we did our best. The patient had no will to survive." A stranger woman was crying uncontrollably with a child. I'm sorry, she did it to save my child," she said. His hand unveiled the white cloth. Cindy. But Cindy's eyes remained closed, never to respond to him again. Cindy was wheeled away because the doctor said she had signed for organ donation. Simon walked out of the hospital in a daze. He remembered what the doctor had said. Just 3 days ago, Cindy had been in the hospital. She had attempted suicide by taking sleeping pills. But the doctors managed to save her from the clutches of death. When Cindy bid farewell to the doctor, smiling and nodding, little did she know that she would be brought back, covered in blood, a few hours later. How did this happen? Simon was having a hard time accepting this reality. Cindy had moved out because she couldn't get along with her family, right? Why would Cindy commit suicide? Simon unlocked her phone. It wasn't password protected. The phone showed little activity. Everything about her in this world was just like that, clean. Upon learning the news of Cindy's death, others finally arrived. Jessica burst into tears immediately. "Cindy, why are you so pitiful?" she screamed, her cheeks swollen high. "Simon, why did you hit me? Are you crazy?" But before she could finish her sentence, Jessica fell silent. She saw the phone in Simon's hand. The sentence "then go ahead and die" on the phone screen was particularly striking. She panicked. "Simon, I was just teasing my sister." But Simon stared at her with cold eyes. "I never knew you were so wicked." Their father put out the cigarette in his hand and walked over to mediate. "Okay, why are you blaming Jessica now? Maybe it's just not her fate." Simon's hand began to tremble. Cindy was dead. She was dead. Yet how could her father say so lightly that it wasn't her fate? Simon looked disappointed. "She wasn't fated to have parents like you guys," he almost shouted. "Haven't you forgotten how Cindy went missing all those years ago?" The room fell silent. The mother, who had been standing still in the same spot since they arrived, finally reacted. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't utter a word for a long time. The father couldn't hold back his face. "Yes, we forgot. But do you remember now?" Simon's face turned deathly pale instantly. Who was he to cry out for Cindy's injustice? After all, he was one of those who had stabbed Cindy. Simon cleaned up Cindy's belongings alone. He looked around the cramped room. The whole room wasn't even as big as Jessica's bedroom. He couldn't help but cover his face with his hands. So this was where her sister had lived. He tried to gather some more of her belongings, but the place was almost empty. As he walked towards the balcony, he finally spotted something different: a potted plant. He remembered that plant. Cindy took great care of it. Simon, look at this plant. It was almost dying, but then I nurtured it back to life. From now on, it belongs to me. Simon sat still in the room for half a day. When he left, he took only the potted plant. His phone rang. Is this Cindy? We need some details for the case you reported. Could you come to the station now? These days, Jessica couldn't bear being at home. Her family had never been this indifferent to her before, but she had to endure it. She pretended to be sorrowful. She bit her nails. It's not even satisfying to die. She transferred the money to that person. But then she was pestered again. After raising me for so many years, it's not easy. Just like that, you die, but you owe me one more. Jessica told him to go away. The demon bared his teeth and chuckled. Not gonna pay up, huh? You seem quite attractive. He lunged at her, as Jessica cried out, asking him to call the police. The demon sneered. You dare report me, I'll expose you, and we'll get married in prison. When violated, Jessica truly resented Cindy. How could she burden others even after death? Simon, who had lived for over 20 years, cried like never before. At the police station, he wept for his poor sister. But what good would it do? When the police showed him the photos of Cindy's injuries for evaluation, he hated himself like never before. A voice inside him screamed, you knew this demon was being released from prison this year. Why didn't you protect her? Cindy, how scared you must have been at the time. He vowed never to let that demon go. It wasn't hard to investigate. When he threw the gathered evidence in front of Jessica, she was still trying to talk her way out. Simon, what's all this? His heart sank to the bottom of a lake. When Cindy was being hurt, and the whole family chose to believe Jessica, what was Cindy thinking? She must have hated us so much. Simon remembered the time when Jessica cut her wrists. Cindy also cried and defended herself. But what did we do? Simon felt a dull ache in his head. He recalled the disappointed look on his mother's face. Cindy, Mom doesn't like kids who lie. But she didn't lie. And then his father kicked her out of Jessica's ward. How dare you harm Jessica? Why don't you just die? Thinking about these things made Simon feel like a hand was gripping his heart tightly, tighter and tighter. He could hardly catch his breath. Finally, he lost it. He grabbed Jessica's arm and lifted her off the sofa. Get out. Take your stuff and get out of this house. Jessica refused to leave, so Simon just dragged her out. Jessica went mad too. She struggled to break free from his grip. Simon, are you out of your mind? Why blame me? If you truly loved her, how could I have had the chance to harm her? I have no blood relation with her. You guys are her family. Stop pretending. You guys deserve this. Those words felt like a burning knife piercing through Simon's heart. Simon remembered that afternoon. When he received the call from the hospital, he thought it was just Cindy being difficult again. After all, it wasn't her first time in the hospital. So when the car got stuck on the highway, he just opened the window and lit a cigarette leisurely. It wasn't until the second call from the hospital that he panicked. If he could have come a bit faster, would there have been a chance to see Cindy one last time? Simon also remembered the doctor's words, the patient has no will to live. His heart started to ache again. If he could have been faster, just a bit faster, to grab his sister's hand in time, to tell her that her brother cared. Would she still be alive? The immense regret surged over him like a tidal wave, swallowing him whole. Just as Simon and Jessica were having a heated argument, his father erupted. What are you fighting about? With Cindy dead, is this family done? Life goes on. He called Simon into the study. Cindy is gone, and I know you're hurting. But she's gone, and you still have a sister. Cindy would want us to be okay. Cindy wants us to be okay? Simon felt like it was the biggest joke he had ever heard. It was the first time he defied his father. I don't have a sister like Jessica, she has to leave this house. But his father's stance was exceptionally firm. Father and son confronted each other for a long time. Father was the first to back down. Son, let me tell you a secret. Jessica is actually your real sister. What are you saying? At some point, Mom suddenly appeared at the door. Father's expression changed instantly. Mom rushed up to him in tears. Real daughter? Is she the child you had with that woman? Silence fell all around at that moment. Silence was equivalent to admission. Mom started pounding on Father like crazy. But the man, fed up with her, pushed her away. The vase shattered. Mom sat on the floor. She didn't get up. Instead, she started laughing hysterically. She repeated Cindy's name, laughing eerily. But in the midst of her laughter, she started sobbing again. Simon wanted to help her up, but she closed her eyes and fainted. She was sick. The doctor said she had a nervous breakdown from the shock. Sometimes he resented her for forgetting everything like that. Father was useless, and Mother was now insane. Simon organized Cindy's funeral by himself. It rained heavily that day. He didn't even bother with an umbrella, just stood in the rain, letting tears and rain mix. Why was it raining? Simon wondered dully, when the weather forecast said it wouldn't rain today. Cindy, are you crying? Cindy, please stop crying, your brother's heart is breaking because of you. A woman with a child came to Cindy's funeral. The child held a large bouquet of white lilies. Mimicking her mother, the child bowed and placed it carefully in front of the tombstone. The child even cried, Sister, I hope you're happy in heaven. A year after Cindy's death, Simon once again thought about death. But he couldn't die yet. There was something he had to do. The devil was caught. But Simon did something unexpected. He hired the best lawyer to defend the devil, and managed to get him probation. His childhood friend asked if he was crazy. But looking at Simon's determined eyes, he shuddered and corrected himself. Simon, don't do anything rash. But no one could stop him. Everyone said he was crazy. But no one knew what he was really up to. One sunny day, Simon took the plant that Cindy left behind, went to the outskirts alone, and found a lush tree. He heard birds singing crisply. This place seemed like somewhere his sister would have liked. Simon thought it was time for him to end it all. The only thing he couldn't let go of was this plant that his sister had always carried. He carefully dug the plant out of the pot and planted it under the big tree. As he worked, he wondered if the lush tree would shelter it from the wind and rain. Either way, it had to be better than staying in that suffocating house. Finally, Simon lay down next to the well-planted greenery. He began to mutter to himself, Cindy, do you know? I took over Dad's company and he ended up in the hospital. Cindy, do you know? Mom's not doing well mentally, she can't differentiate people anymore, she runs up to any girl she sees calling out your name. Cindy, do you know? I kicked Jessica out of the house. She had done too many bad things and finally got what she deserved. Cindy, I'm sorry, maybe you don't want to hear your brother talk, huh? I'll stop talking. On that day, Simon called Dad and Jessica to the old suburban villa with lowered eyebrows and eyes. He said, Dad, Jessica, I've made up my mind. Mom has gone crazy, and now you are the only family I have. Jessica's face lit up with joy. Simon, you finally see it. We are family, we can overcome anything. Come, let's have a drink. They drank heartily. Soon they all collapsed on the table. Simon went back to the bedroom and dragged out a burlap sack. Inside were the unconscious devils. He took out some rope and securely bound the three of them together. Then he fetched several buckets of gasoline and poured them all around. Once everything was ready, Simon brought out a basin of cold water to wake up the three tied-up people on the floor. Simon, you're crazy, let me go. Simon. What are you doing? He ignored their pleas. instead meticulously lit the fire in front of them. The villa soon filled with thick smoke. People can do anything before they die. Jessica was banging her head on the floor, crying and begging incoherently. I'm sorry, Simon, I was wrong. Simon, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Dad wet his pants and tried desperately to talk Simon out of it. But little did he know, Simon had been planning this for almost a year. He coldly watched them reveal all sorts of ugliness. The fire spread quickly. The people who were screaming just a moment ago soon fell silent. Simon was also about to be engulfed by the fire. In the last second before losing consciousness, he thought, Cindy, don't be afraid. I'm coming to be with you. Epilogue, Cindy, what are you doing here? The amusement park was crowded, and the little girl in front of him was wearing a princess dress. When she saw his face, she looked a bit wronged. Simon, I can't find my mom and dad. Simon instantly felt his heart soften. He bought Cindy cotton candy and held her hand as they walked out. Simon, this is too sweet. Don't you like it? I love it. Her eyes sparkled, like stars. Though she always had a bright smile, but Simon felt an inexplicable urge to cry. Back in high school, Dad brought home a girl. She was about the same age as Cindy. Mom went crazy instantly. They argued and threw things in the living room. When Simon rushed back from school, he didn't even have time to put down his backpack before running upstairs. Seeing his sister sitting well in the bedroom, some of the panic in his heart finally faded. Cindy rushed to hug him. Big brother, we have a new sister at home, will you still love me? And he hugged the girl in his arms tightly. I only have you as a sister. Later, Dad and Mom divorced. They all chose to go with Mom. That year, when the siblings were watching TV together, they saw a news report, child trafficking gang dismantled, 39 arrested. Police rescued over 100 abducted children. That's great, those kids can finally go home. Cindy's face lit up with a smile of joy. Simon, they will receive so much love when they get home, right? Simon wanted to smile and affirm his sister. Of course, they will. But when he tried to speak, he couldn't utter a word. It was so strange. Cindy grew up happy and successful. She was always an outstanding child. Dance, piano, calligraphy, she excelled in every aspect. When Cindy was 18, she performed even better than him in the college entrance exam. Simon clapped for her from the bottom of his heart, feeling proud. But an unexpected tragedy struck. Cindy got into a car accident. He rushed to the hospital, holding his sister's hand, begging her not to die. But in an instant, everyone disappeared, even the background turned into a blank white space. Cindy suddenly opened her eyes. Her face covered in blood, she said, Simon, did you have this dream to make yourself feel better? A dream? How could this be a dream? Simon refused to admit it, but memories flooded back in an instant. He remembered everything. Cindy began to fade away little by little before completely disappearing. She said, I hate you. I will never forgive you, big brother. He desperately tried to grab her but couldn't even catch the hem of her clothes. His little sister disappeared before his eyes. This was the last dream of Simon before he died.